Welcome to Harris Academics. This is Endocrine System Part 2, and this video is going to cover the anatomical relationship between the hypothalamus and the pituitaries, the difference between the anterior and posterior pituitaries, the two hormones secreted by the posterior pituitary, and the effects of those two hormones on the body. The hypothalamus is the control center for the endocrine system, secreting and regulating most of the hormone cascades in the human body. It is a subdivision of neural tissue located in the diencephalon region of the brain. The two pituitaries are located inferior to the hypothalamus and are connected to it by a stalk. This stalk, referred to as the infundibulum, contains the pathways which allow the hypothalamus and pituitaries to communicate. So looking at the pituitaries, the larger anterior pituitary is composed of glandular tissue. The smaller posterior pituitary is composed of neural tissue. Now it's important to know that each of the pituitaries has an alternative name. Adenohypophysis is the alternative name for the anterior pituitary. Adeno referencing the glandular tissue, and hypophysis just referring to pituitaries. I find it helpful to remember that the A in adenohypophysis matches up with the A in anterior pituitary. Neurohypophysis is the alternative name for the posterior pituitary. Neuro referencing the neural tissue, and hypophysis just referring to the pituitaries. It's important to know the adenohypophysis produces its own hormones. Contrast this with the neurohypophysis, which secretes hormones produced by the hypothalamus. So neural pathways secrete hormones down to reservoirs located in the posterior pituitary, where they're stored until stimulated to be released into the bloodstream. Let's talk communication. A portal vein is a vein which bridges between two capillary beds, and the infundibulum houses a portal vein which allows the hypothalamus to communicate with the anterior pituitary. So hormones secreted by the hypothalamus travel down the portal vein and regulate the production and secretion of hormones in the anterior pituitary. Now this connection is referred to as the hypothalamo-hypophyseal portal system. The hypothalamus communicates with the posterior pituitary a little bit differently. Instead of using the portal system, they are connected by neural pathways running through the infundibulum. Two hormones, oxytocin and ADH, are produced by the hypothalamus, sent down the neural pathways, and stored in the posterior pituitary. Once the hypothalamus receives the right signal, it stimulates the release of these hormones from the reservoirs into the bloodstream. The first hormone to talk about is ADH, which is produced and regulated by the supraoptic nucleus. So ADH stands for anti-diuretic hormone. And what is a diuretic? Well, a diuretic is something that increases urine production, like the caffeine in your coffee. If you want to say it scientifically, you could say that consuming coffee promotes diuresis. So anti-diuretic hormone is something that decreases urine production. Aquaporins are water channels located in the kidney tubules, and they allow water reabsorption back into circulation instead of becoming urine. ADH increases the amount of aquaporins in the kidney tubules, increases the amount of reabsorption, and decreases urine output. Now, this reabsorption causes two additional effects: an increase in urine concentration because the water that had been diluting it has been reabsorbed, and an increase in blood volume because the fluid which had left the bloodstream to enter the kidneys has been restored. Now that last effect is actually the mechanism for ADH's function in the body. ADH is responsible for regulating blood pressure and blood solute concentration. Looking back at the hypothalamus, the supraoptic nucleus monitors blood pressure and plasma osmolality, where plasma osmolality is a measurement of blood to solute concentration. When blood pressure is low, which corresponds to low blood volume, the supraoptic nerve is stimulated. When solute concentration in the blood is high, which also corresponds to low blood volume, the supraoptic nerve is stimulated. This stimulation sends a signal to the reservoirs in the neurohypophysis, where ADH is then released. The second hormone is oxytocin, which is produced and regulated by the paraventricular nucleus. Primarily, oxytocin's role is the contraction of smooth muscle tissue in reproductive organs. Now, it's important to know that oxytocin increases the strength of contractions during labor and facilitates the ejection of milk from mammary glands. During childbirth, intrauterine pressure stimulates baroreceptors embedded in the uterine wall. These receptors signal back up to the hypothalamus and stimulate the paraventricular nucleus. Now, this starts a chain reaction. Oxytocin is released from the neurohypophysis, contractions increase in frequency and intensity, and baroreceptors are stimulated more. This starts a positive feedback loop until delivery. For more on the endocrine system, click the top video. For something YouTube recommends, click the bottom video. If you found this video helpful, click like and subscribe below.